Welcome to the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting. Today is September the 19th, and this is a committee day. My name is Jeff McMillan, and I'm chairman. At this time, we'll start off by asking Ms. Barber to do a roll call, please.
Jim Blackstock.
Here.
Darrell Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Briggs.
Here.
Jeff McMillan.
Here.
Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
Julie Schuster.
Here.
Clayton Stout. James Stroud.
Here.
Trey Teague.
Here.
Jamie Woodson. David Watson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Before we get started, Director Carter, do you have any announcements you'd like to make? All right. I'd like to welcome our guests today. We have several people I wanted to recognize. We have Larry Woody, who's a retired outdoor rider for the Tennessean and a NASCAR Hall of Fame rider. Glad you're with us today. We have two representatives from National DU, I should say National and Canada, North American, I should say, Dave Koterski. Is that close? I had something in my mouth that was slurred, I'm sorry. And Craig Hilburn, I said that correctly, didn't I? And we also have Mike Kelly, who is the Commercial Fishing Advisory Chairman, so we're glad you're here too. So appreciate it, and we hope that all of our guests will sign a pad that's going around, and so that we can know that you came, and if anyone during our committees wants to address the commission, then I invite you to come up to the microphone and state your name and address your questions to the committee chairman or to me, and I'll ask you that you kind of keep things pertinent to the committee that we're on and the subject matter we're on. I do reserve the right to limit it if it gets too lengthy, so that we'll be glad for anyone to talk when they wish to. So at this time, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Wildlife Management Committee Chairperson Trey Teague.
Thank you, Chairman McMillan. I'm Trey Teague, Chair of the Wildlife Management Committee. At this time, I'd like to introduce Darrell Radijak, Chief of Wildlife.
Thank you, Commissioner Teague. Again, I'm Darrell Radijak, the Chief of Wildlife for TWRA, and I come before the Wildlife Committee today to discuss three different topics that involve wildlife. The things that I plan on talking about today, as you all know, last month the Commission passed a sandhill crane season. It's the first ever crane season that we will have in Tennessee. And in order to give out those permits that will be issued for that season, we need to conduct a sandhill crane drawing. I'll go over the details on how that's going to work, a little bit of information about how that hunt is going to go. And then after we're through with that, I will jump into a dove report. As you know, dove hunting is a long-standing tradition in Tennessee. The opening weekend of dove season is our primary weekend. And I'll give you a quick update on how our dove season has gone thus far. And then lastly, I will talk a little bit about a project that was initiated by Commissioner Cannon called the Moment of Freedom Project. And one of the things that we will need to do to get that project moving forward is to create an amendment to our WMA proclamation. And that will need to take action. The Commission will need to take action on that amendment, or the committee will need to take action for tomorrow's Commission meeting. So to jump right into things, as you know, last month in August, with the passage of the sandhill crane season, we will be hunting sandhill cranes for the first time ever in the state of Tennessee. One of the things that was in that whole proposal to begin hunting sandhill cranes is that we'd have a limited number of permits to give out. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approved a plan that was submitted by us that allowed us to take advantage of up to 775 permits, and the Commission reduced that number to 400 permits, obviously in an effort, a goodwill effort to show that there is concern regarding this first ever sandhill crane hunt. And so as it stands right now, we have 400 permits for sandhill cranes that need to be issued to folks. And the way we plan on doing that is conducting a sandhill crane drawing. And these are the details. We've been working very diligently for the last few weeks to develop this process in which we're going to give out these crane permits. Now, the plan is to conduct a handheld drawing on Saturday, October 12th, 2013. This drawing is to take place at the Birchwood Community Center. This is also the old Birchwood Elementary. And this is the location. Birchwood, Tennessee is a very small town north of Chattanooga. It's also in close proximity of Hiwassee Refuge. Hiwassee Refuge, as you know, is where the vast majority of sandhill cranes come through the state. And we felt it best to conduct a drawing in that location where the vast majority of cranes are located, simply because we want the folks that get the permit to be in the area where they'll most likely be utilized. And so the event itself will be held at the Birchwood Community Center. To get there, it's about 20 or 30 miles north of Chattanooga on Highway 58. And then you go down Highway 60 about 5 or 6 miles into the small town of Birchwood, and this community center is right on the main drag. So it's a relatively easy place to get to, and that's where we will conduct the drawing. Now, we will open the doors on that Saturday. Hopefully we'll open the doors a little bit earlier, but we will begin accepting registrations at 8 a.m. in the morning. Now, keep in mind, this is Eastern Standard Time, so people coming from Middle Tennessee or West Tennessee that may want to get their hands on a permit have to note that time change. And then tentatively, we plan on conducting the drawing at 10 a.m. We'll try to stick as close as possible. A lot will be dependent upon the crowds, but we do have quite a bit of experience doing these handheld drawings with waterfowl blind drawings. And so the process in which this will take place is relatively something that we are accustomed to. And again, this will be a handheld barrel drawing, so to speak. So people will fill out the application, and then they'll put the application into the barrel, and then we will draw the names of the 400 permit winners from that barrel. Now, there are some requirements for the drawing that we have been discussing. Obviously, one application per person. They fill out the application, their name goes into that barrel. One of the things that we are requiring is that anyone that wishes to participate in this sandhill crane drawing must have the minimum licensing requirements to hunt waterfowl. And in the proclamation, it lists as the minimum, if you don't have a license, that you would have a Type 01, which is a basic hunting license, as well as a Type 05 permit, which is the waterfowl hunting permit. So those two permits would be the minimum if nobody has the license. Obviously, there's other things that satisfy that as a minimum licensing requirement. For example, sportsman's license holders qualify, lifetime license holders qualify, and then there's a certain number of exempt individuals that also qualify, such as the military, qualifying landowners, or over 87. Now, when we do give out these permits, there's the first thing to note is, of the 400 permits that we give out in this drawing, they're good. If you receive a permit, they're good for up to 3 birds. So it's 3 birds per permit. Now, keep in mind, the permits will not be valid until you successfully complete a crane identification test. And hopefully this will work. Obviously, it works great beforehand, but we'll see if it works. We've been working very hard with our folks. Our IT folks are just fantastic. This is a prototype. What you see here is going to be very close to what the public will have access to once they get their hands on the permit. But to give you an idea how this thing will work, and this was based very similarly to Kentucky. In fact, they gave us a lot of their test questions. And a hunter receiving a permit will be able to go to this website, enter their TWA ID number, they have to enter their birth date, and then once they do that, they will be allowed to take the test. There's some introductory information on there about what this whole thing is about. I'm not going to have you read it. I just want to show you what will be required of all the folks receiving that permit. Instructions on what they're doing, and then there's a lot of information about species. One of the biggest concerns that we received from the general public throughout this whole process of getting the sandhill crane hunt instituted is their concern about misidentification of sandhill cranes with other species, in particular whooping cranes. And so that is the specific purpose of this test, is to make sure everyone going in the field with a permit can properly identify their target before pulling that trigger. Now, besides giving background information about why we're doing the test, it also provides information about the birds that they may see out there. Obviously, we have pictures and descriptions of what a sandhill crane is. They can click on all the individual pictures and get detailed pictures. So it's a lot of useful information defining what their target species is. We also go into a description of whooping cranes, which are the primary concern from some of the folks. Obviously, whooping crane numbers are much drastically different than sandhill numbers, and we are concerned about any potential whooping cranes. And so we really want to make sure that anyone having a permit in their hand knows how to identify a whooping crane. And again, you can click through the pictures and read the descriptions of whooping cranes. But we also have information about great blue herons. These are obviously birds that the hunters will encounter. We got to make sure that none of these get shot. And there are snow geese that are in the area. These are actually game birds. And so there's 3 or 4 species that some may consider being similar in their characteristics. However, I think the commissioner last month said it great. If the duck hunters can identify between a hen mallard and a gadwall, this should be no problem for the folks receiving our permits. So we're very confident in that our hunters will be able to pass this test. So once they read all the background information, it tells you about how the test will work, and then it goes through a series of questions. There's 20 questions on this test. They've got to answer the correct answer as they go through. You see the check mark. Understand this may change a little bit before it actually rolls out in a couple of weeks, but they have to go through this whole series and identify the birds. Now, if they're going through and there is a question there that they get wrong, if they identify these as the wrong species, they get an X. They will fail the test. They cannot pass the test unless they get all 20 questions correct. And so obviously they would have to retake the entire test from the beginning. The good thing is at the end of it, once a hunter or whoever receives this permit is trained well enough and they can go through this test and answer every question and identify every picture, they will be issued a validation number. And so once they successfully pass this crane ID test, they will then be issued, well, they will have their permits in hand. They will then be able to make their permits valid. Here's a prototype of what the sandhill crane permits will look like. You might not be able to see it too clearly, but one of the things, this right here that I'm showing on the left-hand side is what the one permit would look like. And a hunter has to fill in their name, their ID number. They have to sign it. This section right here is a sandhill test validation number. If they do not have a validation number on that permit that is legitimate, that permit is not a valid permit. So they have to go through, get that validation number before their permits would ever become valid. Now understand that when they receive the permits, they will receive, since they're good for 3 cranes, they'll be receiving 3 of these documents. And so they'll need their name and information on all 3 of the documents to make sure they are valid permits. As you can see, we're really hammering home the message about know your target. This is, like I said, a copy of the permit. We still have information on how to identify sandhill cranes versus those other species. Once a hunter successfully gets a bird, a sandhill crane, he tears this top section off, mails this in. This gives the agency information on the bird that was killed. This bottom portion then becomes the tag for that hunter in the field. Another thing that we're doing to really hammer home the point and to show everyone that we're taking every step possible to minimize the potential of mistaken identity, we've created a brochure that we will be printing here shortly. It's a very beautiful color brochure that goes through all the different legal species and the illegal species. Obviously the legal species, you have sandhill cranes and snow geese. And then the ones that we're making sure that the folks don't accidentally target are the whooping cranes, the great blue herons, trumpeter swans, pelican, anything that could be mistaken identity that they shouldn't shoot. And last but not least, once they're all done, once this hunt has taken place, the last piece of information that the agency will gather is we'll mail each of the hunters a post-season survey. We'll have that list of all the folks that received permits. We'll conduct this mail out, and they're supposed to fill in information as to give us more information on how the season went. It asks for how many days they hunted, where they hunted, or what county they hunted in, how many cranes did they see, how many cranes did they shoot at. So it'll give us a good idea of how well that first sandhill crane season is going. And again, this is a business reply mail. They won't have to add postage. They just drop it back in the mail to us. So, having said all that, does anyone have any questions with how we're progressing with this season and how this first drawing will take place?
Daryl, do you have any indication as to how many people are going to show up for the draw?
Absolutely none. We believe, just based on experiences from Kentucky, they didn't have near the amount of participation that they would have liked to have had. And giving out 400 permits, I don't believe we'll have 400 people applying for those permits, but I could be completely wrong. Now, one thing I forgot to add, if we do not give out all 400 permits, it'll be nice because we don't have to do the drawing. We'll just hand out the permits for all the people that applied. Whatever leftover permits are remaining will then be available at each of the regional offices for people to pick up at that point. That will be.
And they'll be there the Monday after.
I don't know if we set a date. Those details, next week we have a conference call on Monday talking about how we're going to advertise. But I believe as soon as it's drawn, we'll make an announcement when those permits would be available, if they are available, and we'll stick to that. But I think it'll be very shortly after the drawing. So probably that Monday would work.
Would it be advantageous, as far as the whooping cranes are concerned, to indicate to our hunters what the penalty is for if they accidentally shoot one? I mean, don't we think we need to do that?
I would have to lean on law enforcement to tell me whether or not, I don't know if there's a target number that, I know we can do maximum, but I don't know what the penalty exactly would be.
We'd have to check if that's Fish and Wildlife Service,
Yes.
federal violation.
Yeah, we will,
as well, so we can check.
I believe in all the press releases, we will definitely say that there will be consequences should a whooping crane accidentally be shot. No, just the basic, one thing I forgot to add, in order to be put in the drawing, you need those basic licensing requirements, either the type 01 and 05, or a sportsman, or a lifetime, or exempt. That does not mean you have all the requirements to hunt those birds. Before you could hunt a sandhill crane, if you were drawn for a permit before you can hunt a sandhill crane, you'll still need a migratory bird permit, and you still need a duck stamp. So. All right, moving on.
Sorry, guys, I wasn't planning on saying anything. My name's Chris Nishin,
We don't
but
do that.
I would, I understand wanting people to go to Birchwood, expressing the interest, but like I myself, in future years, I'd like to see it maybe go to an electronic draw or something. In future years, possibly because I have 3 people that want to hunt. 2 of them are from West Tennessee and myself, and I'm already booked with a client that day, so there's no way I can go down there. And I'm hoping, y'all aren't hoping, you all are hoping that 400 permit people show up, but I'm hoping that 100 show up so that I can have people run to the regional offices. We're actually looking at land to lease down there to pay some farmers, so that we want to pay the farmers for the privilege to go hunt these things on their property. But I don't want to drive to Birchwood, not get a permit, things like that. I understand for this year, but it would just seem that if there was any way that we could do it, phone in or electronic or something, it would, or even a write-in, it would certainly be helpful.
Thank you.
Because I hate to exclude people from West Tennessee.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Moving on, my next topic I will discuss is the 2013 Tennessee Dove Report. Now, this is not going to be a full report regarding the entire dove season, but primarily, most of the dove hunting, I don't know what percentage, but most of the dove hunting takes place the opening weekend of dove season, which is always set as September 1st. Now, to give you an idea, we are very proud of our statewide public dove field program. We manage this, it's managed out of the Wildlife and Forestry Division, but the regions do all the work. And as you know, the state is divided up into 4 different regions from west to east. And this public dove field program that we operate literally costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars every year so we can provide a quality dove hunt for the sportsmen of Tennessee on public lands. Now, if you look at the dove opportunities going from west to east, again, we're divided up into the 4 regions. If you look at the number of public fields that we provide our Tennessee sportsmen, it's fairly well divided amongst all 4 regions. Obviously, Region 1 led the way with 24 fields. It's either because of they have the greatest land area of all 4 regions or because of the ultimatum that Commissioner Griggs gave them last year. So it has worked well. But Region 1 did lead the way with 24 fields. Now, keep in mind, our public dove field program consists of 2 different types of opportunities for the Tennessee sportsmen. You have leased public fields or WMA fields. If you look at the breakdown this way, it gives you a better idea of how the money is being spent. We have $100,000 set aside in a budget to pay private landowners incentive money to open up their fields in order for the public to come and hunt. Those are the leased fields. We also spend quite a bit of money on our WMAs putting in dove fields specifically for the purpose of these dove hunts. And you can see the breakdown here. Obviously, the thing that jumps out is the leased fields in Region 1. We only had 2 of them. Understand that West Tennessee is primarily agricultural based, and this has been a crazy year weather-wise for trying to get fields put in, trying to get them harvested. Things are too wet. It is very difficult for us to lease a number of fields. And so we were able to step up and have quite a few opportunities on our WMAs. But as you can see, from east to west or west to east, however you want to look at it, Tennessee sportsmen had ample opportunities to go dove hunting across the state. The one thing I'll just noted down there, each region had multiple fields that were dedicated for youth fields. Either they were for youth alone, but the better thing that we found out over the years is when you make it a youth field and you allow the adult to hunt as well, you get much more participation. And so it's a great opportunity to get kids involved with these dove hunts. It's real exciting, and we do provide those opportunities all over the state for those youth dove fields. Now, to give you an idea of how successful they were, we do send people to do bag checks at most of the fields, almost all of the fields. There's only a couple that we didn't collect data on. And you can see that there's a lot of hunters that participated in the opening of dove season this year. Well over 5,000 hunters participated in these public land dove hunts, and they killed approaching 20,000 doves. The total there was 3.4 doves per hunter. It's a great time. If anyone's like me, those 3.4 doves usually takes 2 boxes of shells to get to. So there's plenty of shooting opportunities, plenty of opportunities to harvest doves, and I think our dove program does a great job at providing opportunity for the sportsmen of Tennessee. So with that, does anyone have any questions about the dove program?
Can you go back to that last slide? Is there any correlation between the accuracy in Region 1 versus the other regions? I mean, maybe I'm biased, I don't know. Maybe it was windier in Region 2 or something like that.
All right. No more questions on the dove? Yes.
Carol, is this consistent with years past, or you see an improvement?
It was an average year. It wasn't a banner year. The thing with all migratory birds, I believe, as you can contest, oftentimes it's hit or miss. You could have a lot of doves in one area and just not many doves in another area. So the differences in the numbers may very well just simply be due to the difference of the scattering of the birds across the state. And so it was an average year. It wasn't a banner year, but it definitely wasn't a bust year. We do our best to provide a great opportunity for our sportsmen, and the fact that we provide this to them, and we have so many, over 5,000 hunters just on that opening weekend on public dove fields, is a testament to all the work our guys in the regions do to get those fields ready and prepared for them.
There's no fee for the hunters to hunt the lands, correct?
Absolutely not. On the WMAs or on the leased fields. We pay the farmers in the leased program. We pay farmers X amount of dollars per acre to open up their fields. We advertise those. One of the criticisms we sometimes receive is we don't have those leased fields listed until about a week or 10 days or 2 weeks before the actual dove season opens up.
Mm-hmm.
That's intentional. We're trying to provide the best field possible for our sportsmen. And so we wait to the last minute to see and enroll the farms that have the doves on them. And so obviously we wait until a week before, we sign those fields up, make sure that everything's up to snuff with them, that there's birds on those fields. We pay the farmer that amount of money, and then he opens up his land. He cannot charge anyone to come hunt that land. It's open to the public at no fee, just a hunting license.
That in Region 4, we had the Davis Rice hunt, and the kids, the oldest child there was probably 13, and they averaged better than Region 1 as far as the number of birds they killed. That's true, isn't it? They averaged almost 6 birds per person. So that was Region 4, Trey. Just wanted you to know.
Well, these were the scholastic
that's
play
good.
target kids. Practiced quite a bit. And there wasn't nearly as many dead snags around this tree as obviously there was in West Tennessee or power lines.
I feel a little tension in the commission.
No, just
Facts.
explaining the facts.
I will.
And I want to also say that thanks to Commissioner McMillan and also his neighbor, Gary Whitson, 45 kids got to go dove hunting that wouldn't have otherwise gotten to go. And it takes the most of a year to prepare a field like this, to do all the planning and everything that has to be done. And the place was manicured, and you did quite a job, Jeff. Thank you.
It was fun.
All right, I've got a quick question. Do you know if there any data for the last 2 or 3 years, if the numbers of doves are still decreasing, increasing, holding their own from Fish and Wildlife?
I'll have to get with Dr. Anderson, who's on the Flyway Council, and he has the trends of migratory birds from the Fish and Wildlife Service. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you. I could give Gray a call, and I could tell you before this meeting's up. So. All right, moving on to my last topic for the Wildlife Committee. I want to discuss a little bit about the Moment of Freedom project, but I know I would not do near the justice it needs. So if I could call on Commissioner Cannon to give a brief explanation on what the Moment of Freedom project is.
You know, this is fun because we're following up the dove season where this commission, this agency is giving back to the public, and this is another one of those. In less than a year, we're giving back to the public and some folks who don't have the opportunities that we do. First of this year, the commission agreed in kind of schematic form to develop the Moment of Freedom project, which basically was to develop 21 wheelchair accessible blinds, hunting opportunities, fishing opportunities, or shooting opportunities throughout the state over the next 3 years. In June, I believe it was June, that we formally adopted a business plan, if you will, to carry that forward. And today I can tell you our first waterfowl blind is being constructed. And this commission participated in it. It's on the Varner tract, WMA in Region 3. What has been remarkable for me, and probably should not should be surprising at all. But we began this as a way to give back and to give opportunities to those folks who don't have the opportunities that we have in the outdoors that, quite frankly, I know I take for granted day in and day out, and how hard these folks work. And it began really with Region 1 showing us what they're doing for wheelchair-bound folks last year at our commission meeting. But what's the fun part, in addition to giving back, is just watching the interaction on the commission. Just that one day in the field, what happened as we were finishing up the blind, the interaction from Region 1, sharing what they've done right, sharing what they would change the next time, and then the Region 3 staff, everybody's embraced this. And I couldn't be prouder to be on this commission. I couldn't be prouder of our staff. And, you know, John, the folks down who take care of that area have been remarkable. The proclamation you're about to consider as a committee was their brainchild. In the midst of developing this site, the things that they brought to the table was, you know, we can enhance this waterfowl experience not only for our wheelchair-bound friends, but for the waterfowl community as a whole. And then it snowballed. You know, we can actually give wheelchair-bound folks the opportunity to hunt on days that the other waterfowl community cannot, and it's a win-win-win across the board. So I'm proud of this commission for taking the step. I'm proud of our agency for embracing this as they have. I think we're going to have a lot of fun seeing where this goes. So thank you, Darrell.
Thank you, Commissioner. And with that, if you could dim the lights again, please. One of the things that I wanted to do after the commission meeting last August, I stuck around a little bit, and then I traveled down. I had never been to North Chickamauga Wildlife Management Area nor the Varner Track, so I traveled down with the group to see what this was all about. And obviously, this is kind of what the area looks like. It's not a very good picture. I promise I'll get better pictures, but I would like to take this opportunity to tell you how impressed I was with the commission. I really didn't know what to expect there, thinking that there was going to be all this fanfare, but just to tell the rest of the agency and the public that's here today, the commissioners traveled down there, and Commissioner Cannon showed the original blueprints of this waterfowl blind on the napkin that was drawn out. I forget what restaurant it was at, but I was the only one there that even had a camera. It was just my cell phone. There was no media involved. There was no fanfare. There was no anything. The commissioners went down to really participate and have a hand in the construction of this first Moment of Freedom blind site. And as you can see, everyone chipped in. I will tell you that all they had to do is nail some nails in the boards. The Region 3 folks did the brunt of the work. They did a fantastic job, and they had this all ready for the commissioners to go there and more or less finish it off. But they were not shy of picking up a hammer and nail, nor the paintbrush, and they got to work to make sure this first blind site was all prepped and all prepared. The photo on the right is pretty much what the finished product looks like. Here's where it stands right now. These pictures were taken last week. This blind is ready to go. It's ready to be hunted. It looks a little rough. You can see the mesh on the outside. We are hesitant to put up the blind material around it until right before the season starts. But you'll see the pilings that are there. This will be flooded when duck season rolls around and the birds are coming in. It will be an absolutely fantastic blind once it is complete and once the final brush goes on to camouflage that. But I want to give the commission a lot of credit. I was very impressed with all the effort that they put into getting this first one completed. So with that, what we need to do is we are recommending an amendment to the Wildlife Management Area Proclamation. This will be Proclamation 13-14, and what it does is it amends the WMA Proclamation. Because what we want to do is, under the North Chickamauga Creek section of that WMA, we want to specifically mention this blind site. Obviously, it's on the Varner unit, and it's for wheelchair accessible. It's the wheelchair accessible blind site only. And what we are proposing is to open up seasons specific for this blind. North Chickamauga Creek is in a very residential area just north of Chattanooga, And it is currently only hunted on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And so our recommendation is to open up this blind site on those other days. So hopefully they'll be provided a unique opportunity where they're the only ones out there experiencing this site. And so our recommendation is to open up a deer archery season in the wheelchair-bound hunter area only, and that will be open on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Like I said, the off days when that tract is typically open. We'd also like to propose a turkey season for that same blind site. It'd be the same as statewide seasons, again, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, to give them the sole opportunity to be out there without having competition. Turkey hunting would end at noon each day, and shotguns loaded with number 4 shot or smaller only. Again, that's because of the residential location of this particular tract. And lastly, the waterfowl season, same as statewide, again on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Waterfowl hunting restricted to use of shotguns loaded with number 2 shot or smaller. And that is the recommendation for Proclamation 13-14. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I've got one. Is the regular deer hunting archery only on that section?
No. It's,
I mean, it's same as statewide seasons, muzzleloader rifle?
I'll tell you in a second. It is archery only. It is archery only. It is archery only.
The blind is open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for any hunter. Is that correct?
They need to be confined to a wheelchair.
When-
And there are other sections of that WMA that says the assistant to the person in the wheelchair can also hunt that blind.
The other days that the WMA's open, it's open pretty much anywhere.
Yes.
That's what I asked, sorry. I may be confused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The amendment opens it for wheelchair-bound hunters on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Yes.
I'll get it backwards. We're opening it Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Yes.
Okay, I asked wrong. Thanks for clarifying for me.
Yeah, it's open.
Would they be able to? Yes.
Okay. I think I had it straight, and then I read it up there again, and I'll make a motion to approve Proclamation 13-14 to include access to wheelchair-bound hunters.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the commission? Anyone from the audience? To remind y'all, it's a committee meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
And with that, I am done.
Thank you, Darrell. Yes. At this time, I'd like to introduce Craig Hilburn with Ducks Unlimited for a presentation.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Teague. Commissioners, I'm just going to make just a few comments and then pass it over to my colleague with our sister organization to the north. As I'm sitting here in the audience, I have my thoughts prepared, and then I see things like the presentations that have just been made, and I'm just honestly, I commend this commission and this agency. I've had the pleasure of working with TWRA for about 3-4 years now, and I honestly continue to be impressed with the things that are going on here. This is, it's just incredible. It's a testimony to I know a lot of work by agency staff. I've had the opportunity to get out with some of the staff, and particularly in West Tennessee, some of the waterfowl areas, and just coming from a duck state like Arkansas, I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm somewhat jealous of everything that's going on, and maybe a bit envious as well of all the ducks that you guys seem to winter. But that's just from a personal note. From a Ducks Unlimited perspective, I want to thank the commission as well and your staff for all the efforts that you put into waterfowl management across the state. Particularly in the west part of the state, western Tennessee sits in the Mississippi Alluvial Valley, which continentally is one of only 5 priority 1 areas for waterfowl in North America. And, western Tennessee sits in the heart of that. And it's a priority 1 area because it's in the heart of the wintering grounds. And for the work that your staff does, for the investment that the commission makes, is vitally important, not only for hunters, which is first and foremost in my heart, but for wintering those waterfowl and ensuring that we have strong populations that can go back north and do what they're supposed to do, so that, fulfill the life cycle and we, for a resource we can all enjoy. Again, I'm going to turn it over to Dave in a second, but, from a Ducks Unlimited standpoint, again, we are proud to be a partner with TWRA. We've been a strong partner, had a great relationship for 15-plus years. With an investment from DU standpoint, from an investment of well over $6 million in that amount of time on both public and private property. But that's how strongly we feel about the habitat, the importance of habitat in Tennessee. And while I don't know the total numbers, I'm sure that, that investment by TWRA is much larger than that. And it's important for the resource, and I thank you for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave Kosterski with Ducks Unlimited Canada. He has a much better, a much more formal presentation with some nice pictures, so I'm glad you let me go first, because he's hard to follow. Thank you.
Thanks again, Commissioner Teague and Director Carter, for allowing me a little bit of an opportunity to provide an update on the dollars that you guys commit to go into the breeding grounds in Canada in support of what we like to do is just continental conservation. Waterfowl are a continental resource, and it's absolutely critical that we view them in a continental perspective. And Ducks Unlimited is your organization that works within the continental effort of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan to put those raised dollars, those partner dollars, those match dollars to good work on the ground and conserving habitat. I'm just going to open up my PowerPoint. So I'm going to talk mostly about the conservation successes in Saskatchewan, and I'll talk a little bit more broadly on a couple of topics, but for the most part reporting on what your dollars did this year. Overall, the conservation strategies are really about a number of things. One, we need to protect wetlands. In Canada and in the U.S., we're struggling with protection of wetlands, those small water bodies. Used to have really good protection in the U.S. under a federal law, which was reversed in a judgment, and fighting to get that back. DU Inc. is strongly working on that. Within Canada, we've never had protection of small wetlands, and we're trying to get it. Just recently, in Alberta, they passed some legislation that's improved the protection of wetlands there, and we're still working in other areas. We need to do wetland restoration. We've lost a ton of wetlands, probably 40% of the wetlands in the high priority areas, and in some areas up to 70–80% of the wetlands have been lost. So we need to restore those that have been lost. We need to secure through easements and acquisition, because those are a critical tool. Those perpetual tools that keep it there forever are critical in our work. And then ag policies. We can't do conservation, and I'm sure you guys see this here in your state. You can't do wildlife conservation without agricultural partners. You can do a little bit here and there on lands that you buy, but really to make a difference on a lot of species, including waterfowl, you have to be able to work with agriculture. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in my presentation. And this is one way that we do. We found a tool that can work with agriculture, work with their economics to make it valuable for them to participate. This is a shot from this past spring. And one thing to remember is if you break out all the different aspects of waterfowl recruitment in a year, and you lump it into where those things occur, over 80% of the aspects that influence waterfowl recruitment in a year-round cycle is occurring on the breeding grounds every year. So that's what makes it so critical. That's what makes the investment on the breeding grounds so critical. Not that we don't need to invest in wintering grounds, places for them to feed in the winter, but really when you look at overall production, the limiting factors tend to point towards the breeding grounds as that critical area for recruitment. Obviously, these are provided by abundant wetlands and grassland across the landscape through a number of activities. This is a few more shots of the spring habitat conditions this year. We had a good runoff, good snowfall this past year, which resulted in some great wetland conditions this spring. The table was set again for waterfowl. We've had wet conditions for a number of years, and I think we're getting pretty comfortable with that. I've talked to a number of other people. There's probably a whole generation, almost 25 years, that haven't seen a restrictive waterfowl season. People are pretty comfortable with having lots of ducks, but we will have a dry cycle someday, and thankfully we're putting habitat on the ground to help us through those dry times when they come. That's just a few more pictures. But wetland loss continues, so we need to keep doing that work. We know we've lost habitat in that time period, and we know that we need to keep working towards getting it back. So on the report that we provided, obviously there's a duck connection between Tennessee and a number of states and up to the breeding grounds in Canada. This is just raw band return information that shows that 20% of your raw bands, came out of birds that were banded in Saskatchewan, another 15% in Manitoba, and so on. Identifying, again, this is primarily driven by mallards, but there's all kinds of species that benefit. And these are our target areas. DU is a science-based organization. We've done decades of research, some of the broadest research in the world when it comes to species research. Waterfowl, especially mallards, and within that waterfowl community, have been researched probably more than any other species in the world, one of the highest ones. And we use that information to target where to put the dollars. It's all about providing the return for the investment. Some of the programs that we do, easements, as I've already mentioned. One that I'll point out is the fourth one down under habitat protection. It's a new tool that we've talked a little bit about that we're going to be doing more of. And it's about taking a dollar and making it have a bigger effect each time. So what it is we take a dollar and we buy a piece of land that maybe we couldn't put an easement on, or a landlord didn't want to do another project on, but it comes up for sale and we go and we buy it. And then we do what we want to do, maybe restore wetlands, put some grass on it, and then we put it up for sale. And we sell it with the conservation easement that protects all the habitat on the land. So it still has, all the habitat has perpetual easement on it, but we get some of those dollars back to then reinvest in another piece of property. And it's a tool that we're starting to use. We've used it a little bit, but we plan on using it more because it allows us to extend those dollars further, to affect more habitat, and have a bigger impact on the landscape. It's a valuable tool. We've had a number of private donations, corporate donations that are targeted specifically at that because they like that idea. They like the concept of the dollars rolling over. And right now, the climate in Canada is an appreciating market. Land is going up. It's gone up tremendously and is still on the rise. So there's an opportunity where you could buy, put an easement on, do all the improvements and sell, and actually not get a reduced value, but actually get the same or even a higher value, thus resulting in, you lose the capture of the gain in the value, but it didn't actually cost you $1 and out of your pocket to actually get it all done. So there's opportunities to see that happen and that pool of money continue to flow. This is the Tennessee dollars, and something that's important to remember is it's matched. And everybody tries to match their dollars because it makes it go further. It makes us affect more acres. But this is the minimum match. Something else I'll point out that's on the report is that these dollars that come from the states don't include the Canadian match. And if you look at the history of the North American plan over the last 25 years, for every dollar that's been coming out of the U.S., $1 from Canada has been going to habitat conservation under the North American plan. So if there's $320,000 on average, is $320,000 invested by Canadian partners on those same projects. This is the accomplishments. We obviously did more than our goals again this year. We're always trying to strive to make that dollar go further. Almost 2,000 acres of habitat conservation. Some of it's land purchase, some of it's easements. We'll look to the next slide. It's really about doing easements, purchase. It's about the whole gamut of things. You need to do more than one thing. There's no magic bullet. People have thought there were magic bullets like predator control or other activities. There's no such thing. You have to have a broad array. You have to be able to work with agriculture and partner agencies to change the landscape. You have to change policies. There's a lot of different things that need to happen. This is a snapshot of just the segments that were secured in fiscal year 2013 across Saskatchewan. You can see there's a lot of projects on the go every year. We'll zoom into an area that's a little bit more familiar, especially for commissioners and Director Carter that made a trip to Canada to see this firsthand. This is the Allendana Hills. This shows you where that heart of the heart, and we try to put those projects right in there, driving our science there. There's always projects fall outside, and most of those that fall outside our priorities are those winter wheat type projects that are really driven about industry change and not so much about the concentration of waterfall. But the Prairie Pothole region is still at risk. Since the first time, since the 1970s, we've seen Ag Census surveys show an increase in total cropland. We've been seeing a trend of decreasing cropland since about the 1970s. What we've seen in the last 5-year window, they do it every 5 years, and it was 2006 to 2011 this last 5 years. We've seen an increase in cropland. We've seen a decrease in the cattle herd by 23%, and that was in 2011, where a couple of years later, we're probably at least a 25% reduction of the cattle herd. So decrease in grass, decrease in cattle, increase in cropland is huge. Actually, I'll go back. I want to finish talking about this. It's really about, if we don't have grass on the landscape, if we don't have cattle on the landscape, we don't have ducks, and we don't have other songbirds and other species that require that on the landscape. With a 25% reduction in the cattle herd, honestly, if there's no cows, I mean, you can try sheep and a few horses and stuff. If you don't have cows in the landscape, you don't have grass. There's not a demand for it. There's not a value. We need cattle producers. We need a strong cattle industry, and to see a decline like 25% across the prairies is very concerning. And we do continue to have lack of wetland protection in the prairies, especially Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And commodity prices have been ridiculously high. The dry conditions that have kind of occurred in the latter part of this year, we really haven't had rain till, when I was flying out yesterday since the last month was maybe the previous rain. Things are drying up, which allows farmers to get in the field and drain wetlands. And high commodity prices are really, really pushing for more drainage. Yields this year for agriculture are record. They're having a tremendous yield as far as wheat, canola, everything else. So their revenues are going to be high, and they're going to be looking for ways to spend money, which will include buying equipment and draining more wetlands. So almost wrapping up, effective conservation requires a mix of strategies, as I pointed out, and it takes an entire prairie pothole region. We certainly support and we work closely with the prairie pothole region of the U.S. in North Dakota and South Dakota. It's critical to look at the entire breeding grounds, but it's also critical to look at the entire life cycle of waterfowl, whether it's the winter grounds in the Mississippi Valley, Central Valley of California, Gulf Coast, wherever they go. The one neat thing about waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited that I've always been proud of is we're a continental organization because that's where the ducks are. They go from the Arctic to the Gulf Coast, from the west to the east coast. They take us everywhere, and it forces us to do conservation versatily across the continent. Last couple of slides. This is your contribution to the program in Canada relative to some states around you. Kentucky to the north, I didn't have that one, is a $50,000 a year contribution. And we just encourage Tennessee to consider, continuing to send the dollars, as well as possibly looking at increases somewhere down the road. We certainly are not at our goal. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies has a goal of $10 million as an annual goal. That's a goal that was set back in 1991. It has been reaffirmed a couple of times over that time period. Most recently in 2006, it was reaffirmed. And that goal is something that is really there to ensure that programs like NAWCA, the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, are fully supported. And a portion of NAWCA is legislated to go to the breeding grounds to support waterfowl up there. But it requires match. It requires non-federal U.S. match. And we look towards the states and DU and other partners in the South to find those non-federal U.S. source match dollars to make those dollars flow. So it's really important that we continue to work on this, and we appreciate the past support and really hope that this state recognizes the benefits of this program, sees the returns on the investment from the waterfowl that come down your flyway, among other birds. Songbirds, sandhill cranes, all those species, most of them, many of them come from Canada. Second last slide. wetland conditions, this is kind of the year, this past year, we're about average. So it's been drying, so you give that we had a really wet spring, we had good snow, it's been on a drying trend if you look at the last little while. So we're okay, probably average overall, but we'll see what next year happens. I mean, we've been waiting for a drought for about the last half a dozen years, so it'll come eventually, and at this point, it's looking very dry, but it's allowing for a great harvest and other things, and it actually concentrates the birds a little bit for hunting, which is not bad. So our goal is to maintain our continental vision and efforts. We want to thank Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, the partners, the commission, and all the staff. I enjoy working with the staff of this agency. I'm excited to say that Gray Anderson has taken some great strides and roles within the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. You should be proud of Director Carter for supporting him in those efforts. It's critical to have a strong voice. As they've said before, and I'm sure you've heard this as a commission before, the North American model for wildlife conservation and wildlife management is not repeated anywhere else in the world. And Gray Anderson is going to be playing a critical part in the larger world of wildlife management, but specifically within the waterfowl world. So thank you for your contributions as an agency and your partnership.
Thanks, Dave, for making the trip down to talk to us. DU is very important to this state and this agency, and most of the commissioners here are all waterfowlers, and we understand the importance. We're excited that Harold Cannon is the state DU chairman this year, and we're actually having our January meeting of this 2014 at the DU national headquarters in Memphis. So we understand the importance of it. We appreciate you making the effort to come down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question right quick? Is DU supporting or is there any progress in the Alice program in Canada?
Alice is really kind of quieting down from what I've heard in the last while. The goal behind Alice was continued protection, rewarding a landowner for the lands that's kind of been there. There was a little bit of incentive if you wanted to set new, create new habitat, but it was mostly recognizing those that kept habitat. It's had a pilot in Manitoba, and a pilot in Alberta, and a pilot in Ontario and Prince Edward Island. So it's always been just a pilot program trying to get a feel for how much interest there was in it. I don't think it's ever been considered a full-blown program, but it hasn't gained a lot of traction. I think one of the struggles is we're looking for that CRP program in Canada. The Canadian government will never invest the dollars to have a CRP program. We've got them on board for forage programs, getting grass on the ground through various tools. And I think one of the things that if you look at right now, what's going on with CRP in the U.S., it's actually on the backslide, which is unfortunate. But not surprising given the agricultural pressures and given the pressures to a lot of other economics within the U.S. and continentally. So it's a tough time to try to sell a CRP program anywhere, being Canada or the U.S., I think. Try to keep it in your farm bill as long as you guys can. My hat's off to the program in the U.S. It's been tremendous. I know. The next farm bill, I hope there's a conservation, a CRP in there. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to bring before Director Carter?
Thank you, Chairman Teague. Just a couple comments, especially say thanks to Dave and Craig for being here. They've been great partners to work with forever. But we have a really close working relationship with DU, both in Canada and the U.S. Just want to make a couple of things about the money that the agency puts into the program that goes back up to the wetlands restoration and the buying of wetlands and so forth, whatever it happens to be. In the way the money is arrived at is the North American Waterfowl Plan, based on the number of populations in each state, was to contribute X amount of money each year to go to that program. So not every state is, when Dave was talking about how much money each state put in, and some puts in more than the others, the program's designed that way. Not everybody, matter of fact, very few are actually making the contribution that the plan calls for. But I just wanted you to know it is based on a number. It's not just everybody put in whatever you can. It's based on number of ducks and the amount of waterfowl that you have in your particular state. So states like Louisiana, for instance, their contribution would be much higher than Tennessee's if they match it totally. And as far as the North American Waterfowl Conservation Act, it's very much in jeopardy right now. It looks like in Congress that there will be a cutback, if not zeroed out entirely. And I know a lot of people are working to restore that, not just for waterfowl, but because of the other things that wetlands do in general, from helping flooding situations all the way through actually the waterfowl that we work with. Dave mentioned the 5 commissioners and myself that went to Canada to look at the programs up there. That was a really good trip to see firsthand what actually goes on. It was really gratifying to get to the top of one of the big hills, and there's a big plaque that talks about this piece of property, and it's, as far as you can see, is dedicated by the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency to the preservation of wetlands in Canada and to the North American Waterfowl Plan. And of course, Director Myers was instrumental in that whole movement back from the very origins of when it started, and has been recognized since by his contributions, by a special presentation that they did up, was that in Saskatchewan? Manitoba. But anyway, I just wanted you to know kind of that side of it. And as he mentioned, Gray Anderson, Gray is working hard inside the Waterfowl Council. Not only is he our representative to the North American Waterfowl Plan, not every state has one, and we're very proud of the fact that he was selected to be a part of that program and looking at the continued operation and continued edits to the North American Waterfowl Plan. And also, I guess to move back to that trip for a second, just for the record so that everyone knows, everybody that went on that trip thought it was very important that we know what the money's going for and what it's actually going on. So each commissioner and myself paid our own way to go see that. There was no agency money and tied up in that in any way. So I just wanted you to know for the record that that's how that occurred. And we also didn't want to impact DU, but they were very gracious when we got there that they provided transportation. They took us around. They allowed us to talk to different farmers that were on site, see what they were doing. And so we got some really firsthand look. So I just want to say thanks to them for all they did while we were doing that. And one last thing I just want to throw out for your consideration, thought sometime in the very near future we need some feedback on. Every year, just in Tennessee, I'm talking now, that we have a problem with buying and selling of waterfowl blinds, and primarily it's in the western part of the state in Region 1. We've tried over the years in any number of ways to address that, and it's a very difficult thing to put together something that actually a person would be prosecuted for doing that. It's been illegal since day one, but it's very, very difficult to make that connection, to actually take it into a court system. We get quite a few calls, cards, and letters and everything else from people that show up sometime at the meetings, even talking about, you need to do something about this. It's not fair when a person can buy these blinds and the rest of us, no matter what we're doing, can't participate. In some of the areas, it's actually called the lottery, because people who will go in and actually apply in the waterfowl blind drawings, by all appearances, have no really idea that they will ever waterfowl hunt. They're doing it with the idea that maybe if they draw a blind, then they can turn around and sell that to some person on site and makes a substantial amount of money. We have some ideas on how to address that. When we tried to do that several years ago, the legislature intervened, because at that time we were looking at a statewide drawing, electronic drawing, that would not be on-site drawings, and there was a lot of feeling that because of the support from local communities that get involved in that, and all the civic clubs and Boy Scout troops and everything else who utilize those days as a social event to help everything from selling of different kind of vendors to hot dogs, hamburgers, whatever it happens to be. So the legislature felt it was best not to go that route, asked the commission not to do it, so that was eventually withdrawn. We think we have a couple of ways that we can address that without going to that. It would be leaving the drawings on site and making a few modifications to those drawings. I can tell you that some people would think that's very good and some people would think that's very bad. I can go into more details on what some of those things might be, but first I want to give you all time to mull that over and think about it, if that's an area that you want to move toward, and actually trying to take some of those steps. We'll never be able to curtail that entirely. That will happen. There's not enough safeguards that you can put in that program to keep it from happening. But it could probably take care of most of the overt part that we see that goes on in some of those areas that we just can't address right now. So I'm not looking for an answer at this particular meeting. Just want to give you time to think about that and to tell you that we do have some ideas that we haven't broached before that might be able to take care of at least the greater part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the commission? That concludes the business of the Wildlife Management Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Teague. I think we need a pause for our recording, please.